We changed the order, right? We're going to do the swearing in,
Yeah, swearing
the
in.
election, and then the board supervisor.
Yeah.
So people can have their, say their 2 bits.
What was it?
Where's Brett?
Thank you.
He's here. Talk to her this morning? I guess I get to start next week.
Yeah,
then.
next week.
I'd like to get it over with.
Hey, Mr. Chairman. I was looking at the calendar of upcoming meetings. I didn't see too many night meetings on there.
We could take a little break from that this year.
Didn't have the paper one. Good morning. Welcome to our January 6, 2015 first meeting of the year, Board of Supervisors meeting. If you please rise with me as we salute the flag and remain standing for a moment of silence. Ready? Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Exciting day in Tulare County. We are going to change the order of our agenda items up a little bit. We understand we have one of our honorable judges here who needs to get back to work. So we are going to move item number 2 up to item number 1. We'll have the swearing-in ceremony for Supervisor Steve Worley and Supervisor Mike Ennis by the Honorable Brett Hill, Assistant Presiding Judge. Hillman, sorry.
Okay, Mr. Worthley, Mr. Ennis, would you please raise your right hand? I, Mr. Worthley,
I, Steve Worthley. I, Dennis.
do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution
that I will support and defend the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true allegiance
that I will bear true allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter. Congratulations, you're in for another term.
I was reminded yesterday by Rita Woodard, it's not official until you sign on the dotted line, and so the official is signing on the dotted line. Okay, we'll now take up item number 3, which is the election of a chairman and vice chairman for the year 2015.
Chairman, I move to nominate Steve Worthley as the chairman and Supervisor Mike Ennis as vice chairman.
I will second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Supervisor Ishida, second by Vanderpool. Any other nominations? I'm following Robert's Orders Rules here. Seeing none, we'll close the nominations and ask for you to cast your vote. And it's unanimous. Thank you, and congratulations, Supervisor Worthley and Supervisor Ennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I will now turn over the gavel to Supervisor Worthley. It actually already has his name on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my first order of business is to thank you for your leadership this last year and to present you with a plaque of appreciation for your leadership as chairman for the year 2014 and your good work, Phil. Thank you so much, and congratulations to you. At this time, we'll take up Board of Supervisor matters, and I'm going to just go a little bit out of order because I think Mike and I need to acknowledge some people who are here today and thank them for being here. So, Mike, if you would like to start.
Yeah, I'd like to start by thanking my wife Diane for being here, my mother-in-law Shirley Warden, and my nephew Tanner Warden. So, and the rest of you that are here just to be here, I sure appreciate everybody being here this morning. And when you go through an election like this, it's tough on your family. So, thank you, everybody.
I'd like to thank my wife, Vicki, for being here, my mom, Anita, for being here, my son, Will. 16 years ago, when I was first elected to this position, I had all 4 of my children that were here, and the little one I carried around with me is now a junior in college. So things have changed. I do, too, also want to thank the elected officials and staff that are here today for this occasion. We were at a couple of ceremonies earlier, last Friday for the sheriff's office. Mike Boudreau was a wonderful ceremony. And yesterday we were at the swearing in for Roland Hill and Rita, and it was really quick. We just got there and they did their thing, and it was all done. And I left. I was in Concord, California at 5:15 in the morning and drove to get back for 9 o'clock for your swearing in yesterday. And glad I was able to be there, and glad you could be here today. So thank you all for being, and we'll continue then with the comments from the board members at this time. And before I let you, I know some of you need to get back to work and do different things, but before you leave, I'd like to at least give the board members an opportunity to comment. So we'll start with Mr. Vanderpool.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just want to start off by congratulating both Supervisor Ennis and Supervisor Worthley. Congratulations on your re-election. Look forward to working with you over these next 2 years, hopefully 4, but I've got an election coming up as well. And no, it took a lot of work to get to this point, and really congratulate you. Also want to congratulate our new sheriff. I don't have to call him acting sheriff or under sheriff or anything else. He's actually the sheriff now. So congratulations to Mike Boudreau. Look forward to working with you, and I know there's going to be great things to come for the sheriff's department. And then also want to congratulate our new district attorney, Tim Ward. He's not an appointed district attorney anymore. He is an elected district attorney, and that is a true honor, and I know that you're going to be doing great things in the district attorney's office as well, so congratulations to you. Lastly, congratulations to Rita Woodard on her reelection, and last and definitely the least, I want to congratulate Roland Hill for his reelection as well. He likes to take some pokes at me, so I poke you right back, but congratulations on your reelection, and hope everybody had a great 2014. I really look forward to what 2015 will bring for Tulare County. I think it's going to be a great year, and really do appreciate all the hard work of our elected officials, as well as our department heads and our staff. It's people that make Tulare County great. We have fantastic people working for Tulare County, and I really thank you and look forward to what 2015 holds for us all. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Cox.
Ask the now chair if I could have a couple of minutes for my kind of like my parting statement, I guess. What we've done today is just not a ceremonial changing of the guard. We do this the first meeting of every January, and some people think, well, this is just a ceremonial changing of the guard. Well, it's not. There really is a mantle that gets passed from chairman to chairman, and once you've been in this seat, you know what that mantle includes, the extra work, the extra hours that come along with that. And I would be remiss if I didn't, say that there really are a lot of extra duties that come as being chair of this board. And the last couple of months, I've been literally counting down the days, and then in the last week or so, I've been counting down the hours. So it is a lot more responsibility, and I'm glad to pass it over to such a capable young man as Supervisor Steve Worley. Also, I'd like to thank my wife, Connie, is not here today. She's actually watching an elderly lady today while her regular person is out. So I'd not be able to do any of this without the support of my family. My family's been very supportive, and I often tell people the 2 bruises you see in the middle of my back are palm prints from my wife shoving me out the door and pushing me out to do what is right. So I have a lot of support from my family. I want to recognize we have a Boy Scout troop here today. I'm still very involved with the Boy Scouts. I'm glad to see our Boy Scouts here today, taking a part in this meeting and seeing how our government is really run. So I looked back over last year, over the last week or so, thinking about what could I really say that would be of importance. I looked back and I thought, well, there's really nothing, big. There weren't any big headlines that I could remember personally, because remember, as chair, you're bombarded almost on a daily basis with things that are happening in the county. So I just wrote down a very few things that I thought, raised to that level of me where it was my aha moments. We continued to hold our evening meetings. That is important to me, that we get out to the public in the areas where they're at and give them opportunity to connect with their Board of Supervisors, when it's off hours. We have 2 jails not under construction yet, but we're nearing the point to where we will be building $100 million in new jail facilities, something that's been needed for many years in this county. And I look back on the cost of what we spent for our newest jail, and my first thought was, wow, we should have built 2 or 3 of them right then for what that cost, because what we're spending now is 5 and 6 times more for that same number of beds, it seems like. So we have 2 new jail facilities underway, one in Porterville, one at Sequoia Field. Our juvenile hall vocational education building, been a great passion of mine to see that we provide opportunities for youth in this county, for all youth in this county. That just isn't your ASB kids or the kids that are making the straight A's and that we're not going to see ever in our facilities, but for all youth. And that's been important to me, to make sure all of our youth in Tulare County have an opportunity to make good choices, better choices, and best choices. I'm reminded, the last thing, I'm reminded of a movie, and I don't know when this movie came out. It was a couple decades ago. It's called Yours, Mine, and Ours, a movie about a couple of families, a woman that was lost her husband, a man lost his wife. They each had, I believe, 6 children. They found each other, they got together, and then they had additional children. So they're, yours, mine, and ours. And I kind of felt like this when we came onto the board. When I started thinking about the dynamics of when Supervisor Sheet and I came on this board 10 years ago, now I look back and I think about that movie, how when these kids first got together, it was daily scrapping and fighting and rolling around on the ground, and they were, they were trying to mark their territory. And, there were times when I first came on this board where I felt like I was rolling around on the ground and scrapping and fighting, trying to mark my territory. And I'm happy to say that, it didn't take 10 years to get to the ours part of that. It only took a short time to where, I was able to come in and I will admit I am a strong, bullheaded person at times, very strong-willed, and I like to get my way. And, it didn't take long to find out that, I needed to work and play well with others on this board. And I think this board does a wonderful job of blending various different backgrounds, different families. We've done a very good job of coming together, working together for the common good of Tulare County, and I think we've done that. And as I look back over the last 10 years, I'm hoping to look forward over at least, like Supervisor Vanderpool said, at least the next 2 years, and see that we continue the progress that we've made, that I feel we've made over the last 10 years. So I look forward to your reign, Your Majesty. And with that, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox, and great job this last year. Very much appreciated. Mr. Sheeta.
We've had a very consistent board for the last 6 years. We've all been here for at least 6 years, and that continuity is extremely important. And I look forward that we all work together well, and we all have our different functions that we do, because people gravitate to what they like to do, and fortunately we don't have any conflict about what we like to do. But I want to point out one part that's going to change substantially this year because of the change in leadership, and that's public safety. Our sheriff and our district attorney, you have a lot of new people that have taken the reins as the district attorney and the sheriff in the valley, and in fact the state. So I look forward to you working very well with them, and I think we need to work together as a valley, and I have all the confidence in the world that it'll work out well. The thing I look forward to in this coming year is the implementation of the water bond. I believe that Sykes Reservoir will probably get the approval for construction this year, and that reservoir is in Colusa County, but every reservoir counts to our overall water supply. And I also believe that we're going to see a substantial amount of money for our disadvantaged communities. And the Tulare Lake Basin, and especially Tulare County, is very well poised to take advantage of those funds to solve some of the water quality issues we have in our disadvantaged communities. And that's all I have today.
Thank you. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I just also want to congratulate Sheriff Boudreaux and District Attorney Tim Ward on their reelection, and of course Rita, and his mother lives right across from me, Mr. Hill, on their reelection. So great, and thanks to all the county employees, what you do on a daily basis, because you are the face of Tulare County. So thank you very much, and I do feel that one of the big issues for the coming year will be groundwater management, and that's something we're going to have to take on, and so that's going to be a big issue. But as we move forward, I think this county is very well prepared in all of our departments to take on any tasks that might come their way. So thanks for all of your support, and thanks for what you do every day. Thank you very much.
We're going to, before we begin our public comment period, we're going to take a small break for those of you who need to leave, and then there's been a request that we could get a photograph of all the electeds together. So everyone's here and the Board of Supervisors, so if we could meet down in the well here in just a moment, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Before I do that, I just wanted to say again, thank you for all who are here today. Next week, I will be giving a state of the county and sort of a vision for the coming year, and would welcome you to come back at that time if you'd like. It might be kind of fun. Gene, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Before we take a break, I'd like to introduce our new child support director.
Absolutely.
Roger Dixon. Roger, if you could stand up. We're fortunate to have Roger Dixon from Las Vegas, Nevada.
Clark County.
He's got Clark County. He's got over 20 years of experience in the child support field. He brings a level of energy and excitement to the job. I look forward to working with Roger, and I have every confidence that he will do a good job. So, Roger, welcome to Tulare County, my friend.
And I want to say welcome back to our the person who keeps us all in line, Michelle Baldwin, who's been out for a few weeks with some surgery. And welcome back, Michelle. Thanks for being here and keeping me on the straight and narrow. We will take a 5-minute recess at this time. Again, thank you for all being here, and we will take back up our public comments when we come back in 5 minutes.
There's that sweet spot down there in there, Steve.
I know.
There's that sweet spot in this room where the whole thing echoes.
Yeah. I laugh. People think they're whispering. You can hear meetings.
Everybody's all excited. It's a new year. Wants to talk to each other. It's great. Good. What's that?
I thought Phil was talking about
I hate to break it up. We're having such a good time out there. We will now take up the public comment portion of our meeting. Anyone wishing to appear before the board on matters within our jurisdiction but not on today's agenda are invited to come forward at this time to make their public comments. So is there anyone present today? Seeing no one, we will close the public comment period, take up our consent calendar. I'm advised that item 13 is we can go forward with it, but it needs to be modified to read November 24th, not the 25th,
Okay.
and to add November 10th to the date that will be canceled for Veterans Day. Are there any other items that need to be taken up separately by members on the consent calendar?
Sheriff, we can pull item 28 for separate consideration.
Right, very good. Any other items? If not, we'll entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
Motion to approve consent calendar.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mr. Ennis. Please cast your votes. And the vote is unanimous. We'll take up item 28 on a separate item. Authorize and approve a resolution for the Housing-Related Parks Grant Program.
Mr. Chair, I really don't need a staff presentation on this. I was able to talk with staff. I am going to be a dissenting vote because of one of the parks we have are having issues with one of our CSDs taking responsibility for the facilities in their area, and we're going to be adding to that prior to having the signed agreement. So I'm going to be a dissenting vote. We do not need a staff report.
All right. Any further comments or questions? If not, entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Motion by Mr. Ennis. Second by Mr. Ishida. Please cast your votes. Motion is approved 4-1. Supervisor Cox voting no, all other members voting yes. Thank you very much. And we will then take up our first timed item. Get to it here. Item number 33, a request from the Sheriff's Department to approve a personnel resolution. Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the board. This is a simple request. I won't take too much time, but be open for questions from the board. As you know, over the last year and a half, we've been operating with two acting assistant sheriffs in the position of the second in command role. Over the course of time, we found that to be a very important position for us with the size and scope of our department now. As you know, we're breaching close to 800 staff now with the potential of over the next 4 years to be increasing those numbers. We're a big department. The areas of responsibility and accountability require very specific oversight, specifically with the jails that you had mentioned earlier, Mr. Cox. That's a very big program and initiative that we're putting forth that requires us to visit Sacramento and as a variety of other commitments. Having said that, what I'm asking for is we had our temporary positions as 2 acting assistant sheriffs. I'm asking that one of those positions be made full-time as a permanent status. The current position of undersheriff is the one that I held for so long and moved into the position of sheriff now after being successfully elected. That position remains open. We will be filling that position with the idea that we would still have 2 seconds in command with different titles, with different responsibilities, with a clear line of chain of command. Specifically in law enforcement, that's very needed, that we have a clear line and chain of command. We'll be growing over the next few years. I'm also asking for a 5th captain to be placed. We currently sit with 6 captains. I'm asking that 1 position be removed to help offset the fiscal impact that would be to our department with the permanent position of an assistant sheriff, which shows fiscal responsibility on our side, and I believe that it's a needed component. So with that, I would open it up to any questions or comments.
Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Bennett?
Mr. Chair, just a comment. I did have a chance to talk with Sheriff Boudreaux yesterday about this, and I was really glad to see that he was deleting one of his captain positions in order to offset the majority of the cost for this action. You know, you hate to see an inverted pyramid in management or in an organization, and I think you're doing a good job of making a distinct chain of command as well as making sure that you have the ability to function the sheriff's department the way that you need to. So I'm definitely supportive of your request.
Thank you,
Any other comments or questions?
I'll move for approval if there is no further questions or
Motion
comments.
by Mr. Vanderpool.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ennis. Please cast your votes. Vote is unanimous. Thank
To
you,
the
Sheriff.
board, thank you very much, and Happy New Year to each of you.
Happy New Year to you, too.
Thank you.
This time we will take up our timed items. First item we have is number 5, a request for Resource Management Agency to conduct a public hearing to approve a supplemental grant activity. Morning, Mr. Washoe.
Good morning, Chairman. Mike Washam, RMA. Today we have before your board a supplemental grant activity application to secure a fire tender for the Tulare County Fire Department. Just to give you a brief overview of what we're presenting here today, there's a new policy in CDBG where you have to spend down program income before you're able to tap any new grant. Therefore, to maximize the grant that we just were awarded, we need to spend down our program income. And to authorize the use of program income, that's what we're here for this public hearing today. In October, we were notified of a $2 million grant. As I said, to expend, we must expend all of our program income funds first. On November 4th, we were before your board to hold a design phase of the public hearing where we opened it for review and comment for activities. We proposed the use to purchase a fire tender for the Doyle Colony Fire Station. Following that meeting, we contacted the state. We were submitted and were approved for the supplemental activity request. And today's public hearing is the submittal phase public hearing to authorize and approve the addition of the supplemental activity. The county currently has $255,000 of program income. Back in November when we came, we had $240,000. This is a fluid account that's growing. We anticipate and estimate that it's approximately grows by about $50,000 a year as people pay off their loans and activities such as that. So we've got $255,000 currently in that, and that will be subject to growing as we go forward. We're requesting to utilize these funds to purchase a water tender for the Tulare County Fire Department Battalion 2 stationed at the Doyle Colony Fire Station. Water tenders are an essential firefighting tool in the rural areas. The fire department cannot always depend on the availability of local water in these rural areas, especially during this drought. The proposed water tender will hold 3,000 gallons, is capable of drafting water from hydrants, streams, and lakes. Typically, water tenders support engines and/or fire trucks in these fires. Water tenders can also be used in chemical accidents to clean highways after collisions or pump water in floods. This is a photo of a typical type of truck that we're looking to purchase. With that, we request the board to open the public hearing, approve the capital asset purchase for the water tender in an amount not to exceed $285,000, and authorize the necessary budget adjustment per the attached 308. That concludes staff report.
Just a quick question. I noticed you indicated you had $255,000. This is a request for up to $285,000. Is that because of the fluidity of the amount?
Absolutely. We want to make sure that the fire truck has all the whistles and bells that it needs, and to maximize. So we're anticipating that there may be some additional funds by the time we go forward with this. So it's up to.
And if there's any shortfall, it'll come out of the fire department's budget.
I believe that we'll have sufficient for this. And this is...
The chief was shaking his head yes.
This particular item is a very good... This was a planned purchase. So what we're doing is, in effect, saving the county's general fund this $250,000. So I think it's a very good program.
I didn't want to make light of that. You're exactly right. It's a very good deal for the fire department.
Absolutely. We do have, I just want to mention, we do have a sign-in sheet for the public hearing if anybody wants to sign their names down as well. I know there are a few fire officials that have already put their names on it.
Mr. Cox?
I would imagine the bells and whistles comment was literal.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I just like this, this tender is very important to that area, especially with the drought going on right now. That's what we use to fill those 5,000-gallon tanks out there and keep them full for the people. So not only for fighting fire, but also for this drought. So it's very essential. Thank you.
All right. If there are no other questions or comments, we'll open the public hearing at this time. Anyone wishing to address the board on this matter is invited to come forward at this time. Here he comes. Defending his $30,000. Morning, Chief.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I just wanted to say that we're all cognizant of the fact that we don't have municipal water systems out there in the outlying areas, and so subsequently for RMA to come forth and offer, graciously enough, this monies that we may purchase as water tender is not only falls within our vehicle replacement program, but it's really a great consideration. So I want to thank you. I want to thank RMA and all its other county members that have made this possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other comments? Not, we'll close. Oh, I'm sorry. Gene.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Gene Rousseau, County Administrative Officer. I just want to follow up on Supervisor Ennis's comments. This is, this action in front of the board today is a result of many conversations and meetings with state officials regarding the drought and what the county is willing to do to at the table to provide services and what have you. So we committed to using our program income, which is flexible. We can use these for other things, but we told them we want to use this for drought-related purposes, which was really received well on their part, and we're still in negotiations and discussions with the state on other opportunity.
All right, public hearing is closed. To bring it back for action.
Move for approval.
Second. By Mr. Ennis, second by Mr. Ishida. Please cast your votes, and the votes are unanimous. Thank you to all concerned. This time we will take up item 6, public hearing request from the Treasurer Tax Collector to continue the public hearing from December 16th. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Crystal Sullivan, County Counsel, here on behalf of the Tax Collector. This matter was requested, I believe, by the CAO to be continued to this date. However, the witnesses available for that hearing from the Sheriff's Department are not available. They were already at a scheduled training, and so we're requesting that this be continued to January 13th. Mr. Perez, counsel for Ms. Lopez, was in agreement with that and actually preferred having the time delay.
All right. Any questions or comments by members? I entertain a motion to continue this matter to the...
Move it to...
Mr. Chair, don't we need to... Since this was a
oh yes, before we take action on that motion, is there anyone here today who came for the specific purpose of commenting, providing testimony on this matter? If not, if there is, I want to give you the opportunity to do so. You can also come back on the 13th, but this gives you an opportunity to speak today. And please give us your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Michael Latondo. I just wanted to state today that this, I understand that everything has its ways of going, proceedings or whatnot, but this delay to me, it just seems relatively just unnecessary. The Lopez family, they have met all of the requests by the board, and it just seems to be going on and on and on, and I just don't understand it, especially since they've made the effort to go ahead and take care and rectify the situation. So ultimately, I hope everything goes well ultimately, but I would like to let everyone know again that since my time of being involved with the Lopez family and the establishment Saints and Sinners, not only as an employee through graphic design, but as a client, I've been in there, never seen anything negative happening there. Never seen any crimes committed. So to actually read in the newspaper that those accusations are being made is just like, it's shocking. It really is. And I really do hope that you guys take into consideration that if there was reports on these so-called crimes, why aren't they being presented? So keep that in mind when you guys make your decision. Thank you
very much.
Michael, before you leave, could you give us the address for where you live for the record?
315 South Orange Circle in Tulare.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
And Mr. Chair, just a quick question for the chair, for Michelle or Crystal, whoever can answer this question. Just would you please document why this has been continued as much as it has? It's not all on the sheriff's department, correct?
No, Mr. Rousseau contacted me and asked that it be continued because of other pressing business that was before the board when it was set. So that's why this continuance was moved forward, but that date that it was set wasn't cleared with the parties as to the availability of the witnesses. So that's why I'm before you asking that it's January 13th.
And I also just want to point out that the initial continuance took place because of the applicant's request for a representation by counsel. And
correct.
In order to schedule their counsel for a specific date, we had to extend it. So we're coordinating with multiple parties here. This is not something that we're just kind of kicking the can down the street. We're just trying to get everybody lined up for the same date and same time.
And it has actually allowed the applicant to come into compliance with some of the issues that were raised with the building. So Mr. Perez, as I stated, had no problem with this continuance.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Now entertain a motion. I believe there was a motion being made by Mr. Ennis.
Move to January 13th.
Yes. Motion.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Cox. All, please cast your votes. And the votes are unanimous. All right. At this time, we will take up our last untimed item. Item number 34, a request from the Resource Management Agency to approve the cooperative agreement with the California High-Speed Rail Authority. Morning, Mr. Bond.
Mr. Chair, Board, CAO, County Council, good morning. Mike Bond, RMA Public Works. There we go, thank you. The matter before you is the cooperative agreement with California High-Speed Rail Authority. I'll use the word authority for that entity. And I'll start with a brief outline, and we'll go through these items very quickly. Just a brief overview, the chronology, the proposed road vacation, and the proposed new bridges. We'll touch on the locations of those, touch on the benefits and impacts. And then there are three items: the summary vacation, non-summary vacation, and road closures. Those will be options to the board at future dates, so they do not apply at this time. And then touch on the requested action. So the cooperative agreement, this is the context. It is the second agreement, actually, with the authority. The first agreement was approved by your board in September 2013. It's referred to as the Master Agreement. This cooperative agreement that you consider today is not a time-sensitive issue, so we do have some time to go over any options that you would like to consider. And then the subsequent action by the board would look at each of the 5, it's referred to as bridges or overpasses, but there are 5 of these projects that would be handled by separate agreements. And there are 3 road vacations. We'll go through each of those. This is an overview of the chronology. And as you can see, many board actions here. Back in August of 17, for instance, this is the first initial work that was done by High-Speed Rail. It was actually geotechnical work, preliminary borings in several locations. The September 17th resolution was, as referred to, the Master Agreement in September 2013. There was a letter regarding the Hormel property in October of 13. And then in December of 13, that's when the notice of proceed was issued under the Master Agreement. At this point, we're now looking at this cooperative agreement. This is coincident with today is the groundbreaking for the first segment of the high-speed rail line. That's being conducted in Fresno as we speak. As an aside, there is a representative from the High-Speed Rail Authority here. Terry Ogle, I believe, is the project manager for this that may be available for questions. But this is something that, as I mentioned, later this year, there would be subsequent agreements that are referenced by this cooperative agreement. Each of those agreements would be brought to your board for approval for these overpasses or bridges. We would also, RMA Public Works would, in addition, like to will bring items for the 3 so-called road closures as well. Those would involve vacations. And the general schedule for the high-speed rail project for this segment is to begin activity mid-summer this year and with completion in 2020. This is a diagram of from the High-Speed Rail Authority for this segment. It's really referred to as Construction Package 2-3, and it extends from Fresno just north, actually 1 mile north of the Tulare-Kern County line. So this is what it looks like, and you can maybe see the segment within the county just south of Corcoran down to the 1 mile north of the county lines. The road closures or vacations, I think more properly identified, are 3. One is at Avenue 136. This is a county-maintained road. The second one is at Avenue 108. This is a county-maintained road east of Highway 43. It is a non-maintained road west of Highway 43. And then the third item is at Avenue 24. And this is a maintained county road west of Highway 43. There is no easterly portion, so it really terminates west of Highway 43. And the same diagram is shown with the proposed overpasses or bridges so that you can see the proximity relative to the road vacations. So there are 5 at Avenue 128, 120, 112, Avenue 88, and Avenue 56. Also at the bottom of the screen, you'll see one that's outside this current segment for construction. It's south of the county line, but it's just provided to see the proximity where the next crossing would be south of the county line. Some of the benefits and impacts of this project. According to the authority, there is $100 million in value for the road improvements that would be constructed with these projects here. Another big aspect is safety. All of these crossings currently are rail crossings, so they have the typical guard arms, lighting, etc. So those would be eliminated. So there would be essentially, I think, a big safety factor, eliminating crossings at railroads. And the bridges.
Mike, before you get into that, because that's a good point I had thought about. So in this case, the alignment of the high-speed rail will be essentially parallel and adjacent to the BSNF line. So when you talk about at-grade crossings now, we're talking about the existing line, but with the high-speed rail, it would actually cross both lines. Is that the intended result?
Yes, that's a good description. It would be parallel. There is a so-called Corcoran bypass where it goes to the east of that line, and also the so-called Allensworth bypass, which deviates as well. So, but other than that, it's essentially parallel to it. So those are safety issues. And in terms of the road section, the bridge section would be 32 feet wide. There would be two 12-foot drive lanes and 4-foot shoulders on each side for a total section of 32 feet wide.
Excuse me, Mike. Mr. Rashid also had a comment or question.
Yeah, I have a question. When we get to the BNSF alignment, are these overpasses going to include the BNSF line?
Yes.
If I can follow up on that.
Mr. Cox?
Yeah, you mentioned the 32-foot wide bridges. My only concern with this are those at 32 feet, are those built using today's number? Because, if you're going to close off other crossings, that's going to shift that traffic to those other roads. Has enough capacity been built into those overcrossings to handle the additional traffic? I mean, that's my concern, that we didn't use today's crossing numbers, but that we, used the crossing numbers, all of the crossings included, figuring that those are going to be, pushed into those 5 crossings. And then as well, are they using today's number? Did we allow for some future capacity 5-10 years down the road? What I would not like to see is 15, 20 years from now, I don't think any of us, well, one of us might be sitting here, but 15, 20 years from now, having to come back and pay to widen these or put another lane or two on these overcrossings. I just want to make sure that they've planned a full build out to where these overcrossings will be good, for many years to come.
And thank you, Supervisor Cox. That's a great point. And to emphasize again, each of these crossings would be done under separate agreement, and they would all come back to this board, as would be the so-called road closures or vacations, I think would be a proper way. Those will all come back to your board. So there'll be 8 items altogether.
And then I assumed that part of that would be the analysis that Mr. Cox is talking about and making sure that we build adequate capacity into these structures.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. I'm sorry, we interrupted you.
But in terms of farm machinery, extra wide loads, extra high loads, those would be accommodated for this design. Some of the impacts, obviously there's going to be longer routes for some businesses and residents in the area because there are a limited number of these crossings, 5, that they would have to go to. And then, of course, there's the painful experience of construction. So we spoke with the Vice President at Parker's Brinkerhoff yesterday about the construction schedule. That hasn't been defined yet, so that's to be provided to us, so we don't know how they're going to stage these. So I think that's another point that we want to be very clear on so that we reduce the impact or the inconvenience to the extent possible.
Mr. Chair, if I could stop Mike right here. I think this is a good point where we should talk about some of the impacts. You mentioned longer routes for commuters, inconveniences during construction, but you did not mention a very large impact, and that's to a pretty significant sized Tulare County business that's going to have their farm or their operation cut in half, which I do think we can avoid with potential alignment of the Avenue 120 bridge. But as it stands currently, I've been in communication with PFFJ, or Pigs for Farmer John, or Hormel Foods, which has the facility in the southwest part of the county and happens to be in District 2. And they have made their point known several times, both with county staff as well as with the High-Speed Rail Authority. And in their attempt to communicate with the High-Speed Rail Authority, they've really gotten no clarity in terms of what their plan is for their business. And I really have a very difficult time approving an agreement without some clear direction to them that their business is going to be preserved or at least accounted for and accommodated in going forward. So I don't know if anybody from the High-Speed Rail Authority would like to comment to that, or if that's something that county staff, we can maybe set up something and maybe get that addressed before we move forward, because I don't think they're the only ones. In my conversations with them, there are a few other landowners in the area, and the phrase they use is they are lawyering up, and I don't think that that's appropriate for us to move forward as a county when we have the opportunity to advocate for our local businesses and make sure that they are accounted for before this agreement is reached.
Supervisor Vanderpool, thank you for that question, because there are really two. This Hormel operation is really impacted at two avenues, 112 and 120.
Yeah.
And so far, the alignment for 112 has actually been, it was a wholesale redesign. Not to say it satisfies all the issues, but the clear impact is at Avenue 120 for the feedlot operation. So we agree. We're aware of that. And again, your board will see the agreement for those two crossings as separate items that hopefully we can address from a staff standpoint any issues we can.
Mr. Chairman, if I might speak to Supervisor Vanderpool's question as well. Those present saw me nodding when he used the phrase lawyering up, and I agree that it is quite unfortunate that any constituent in California has to get a lawyer in order to deal with an organization from the state of California. Unfortunately, it has been our own county experience that frequently we have to sue the state in order to even get their attention. And frankly, it is to the benefit of these particular businesses that they do seek the guidance of not just a lawyer, but a lawyer who is very knowledgeable in this kind of law to address these items. To a certain extent, that will include the county peripherally, but the principal player here is the state rather than the county in terms of making these ultimate decisions. And unfortunately, it is quite likely, regardless of whether the county enters into these agreements or not, that the state is going to be proceeding to it. Today, their state is, High-Speed Rail Commission is meeting in Fresno, and they are going to do roughly 30 resolutions of necessity. That's the first step toward an involuntary take of real property in, as my understanding is right now, Madera and Fresno County. They have represented themselves with almost an eagerness to take that step, almost a very aggressive stance in taking that step. So to the extent that it is possible for the county to come to an agreement which assists the county's interests that we are going to have to deal with, I would certainly advocate that, provided that the terms of the agreement are acceptable to your board. In regard to specific individual businesses or property owners, my guess my educated guess is that there's going to be further litigation in this county. There's already litigation in Kings County, and Kern County most recently has a whole group of plaintiffs that have joined a sort of a programmatic litigation against the state. But there are going to have to be individual lawsuits over exactly what you're describing, the lack of the state's ability to understand that by going in a certain direction and saving themselves a few rail feet, they are creating 2 farms now, for example, 2 operations. Duplications of everything are going to be required. And I don't see that as changing at all.
I appreciate the commentary, and I'm sure that all attorneys appreciate your advocacy for attorneys' employment. But also, I just really wanted to make the point, because I think this is an opportunity for Tulare County on a local level in determining the alignments and the agreements that we approve with the authority to bring forth that local advocacy and make sure that we are doing what we can for our businesses here in Tulare County to make sure we're not taking their farm, bisecting it, and basically making it an inoperable farm. So I just want to point that out, and that's kind of my justification for the vote that I will be taking. Unless there's, I believe there is a member of the High Speed Rail Authority that would like to address
We'll give you an
that.
opportunity to speak. I think I'll let Mike finish up with his presentation.
Thank you. And the next portion of the presentation is really regarding the vacations of portions of the county right-of-way and what the board's options will be. Again, these will be future. They'll be handled separately. And the first option, I'll call it, is the summary vacation. And that would be by board resolution, and it would vacate the portion of the right-of-way in excess right-of-way of a street or highway not required for street or highway purposes. And there would be a caveat there for public utilities, which I understand is going to be addressed by the High Speed Rail Authority, but that's not a given. But so there's a caveat there, and the resolution would include the statutory authority, et cetera, for the vacation to occur. The clerk attests to the resolution, which would be recorded. In this process, on the summary vacation, no public hearing would be required, but Public Works would propose that outreach does occur for these, so we have a clear understanding of what the community thoughts are on this particular closure. And again, we're talking about the 3 closures. So this would be the option to the board without a public hearing, but we would suggest that the non-summary vacation is the process that would include a public hearing. And it's basically noticed, and the board would adopt a resolution, and that would be, the clerk would attest to the resolution, which would be recorded. And then there's a third item that I'll bring up. This is out of the vehicle code, and it really is a road closure, but we just wanted to cover everything. And this is typically the option that is associated with a temporary closure, such as parades, et cetera. But it's not applicable, but we thought we'd bring it up and just make you aware, since the term is used in the agreement. And that brings us to the request today is to approve the cooperative agreement with the California High Speed Rail Authority and authorize the chairman to sign the agreement after review and approval as formed by county council, which has been done. So with that, I'd like to open up.
Mr. Cox had a question or comment.
Really quick question back on the summary vacation. I know in a lot of these areas where we have right-of-way, Mike, we've acquired, maybe a 3-acre or 2-acre piece along with that. We're just talking about the footprint needed for the street, correct? We wouldn't be talking about the additional acreage that came along with that piece that we purchased for right-of-way.
Correct, and that's an excellent point. And I wanted to clarify that because really the vacation would occur over the rail aligned right-of-way, that county road within that area. That's the portion that would be vacated. But for the termination of the road on each side, there's a detail. It's shown in your Appendix A as part of the agreement. So it would be a turnaround. It's designed for a large tractor-trailer turnaround, so it would be very wide. That would be associated with additional right-of-way takes.
Great, thank you.
Are there any questions or comments of the members?
I just want to make sure that the representative
Yes.
from the authority has the opportunity to speak.
We understand we have an authority representative here today. I'd like to give him an opportunity to speak. Thank you for being here. Missing out on the big event in Fresno today.
Good morning, everyone. That's okay. I'd rather be here communicating with you all. Good morning, and thank you all for letting me be here, Mr. Chairman and Supervisors. I appreciate this opportunity. Let me work backwards a little bit from where we were talking about with...
Give us your name, too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Terry Ogle. I'm the project manager for the Central Valley for the High-Speed Rail Authority. So we have about 5 to 6 projects split up in different phases or different lengths, and I'm the project manager for the whole entire Central Valley in those projects. So apologize for not giving you my name at first. I'm going to work backwards a little bit from the presentation that he made and talk about vacations and those type of things as well. As the high-speed rail comes through Tulare County, there will be times where we intersect the local streets, the local roads, and everything like that. And where that is, that property where your county road sits right now, that will be where the high-speed rail is going to be. And so there's going to be, we understand that there's going to be a part of that property that belongs to you now that now has to come to us, and that's going to have to be transferred from you all to us. And we understand that we're going to have to come back to you 8 different occasions on 8 different one of those locations to do that. There's also where we're building those overcrossings or we're building those cul-de-sacs or things of that nature that we're buying the property for those overcrossings because they go much longer than what an at-grade crossing is as well. And so we're going to come back to you at those grade crossings, and that property that we bought for those grade crossings, those long stretches, we have to give that back to you and kind of a vacation or relinquish, because we buy that in the high-speed rail's name at the beginning, but then we relinquish that back to Tulare County at the end of the project. And so once those are done, that becomes part of that. So we understand that we will be coming back to you at least 8 times. We may bundle them all up and come back to you once for all 8 once the project is done, but we do realize that we have to come back to you and communicate with you at that time. We also know that at each overcrossing at Reed Road Crossing, our design builder has to come and work with county staff. Just because you approve this agreement doesn't mean the design builder gets to do whatever he wants to do. The design builder has to come, work with county staff, meet county standards, meet county requirements for those road crossings and those road closures. To answer your question, yes, we've looked at traffic forecast for a 20-year horizon, and we've worked with county staff on that. And so the width of 32 feet is what's required for the 20-year forecast for traffic that's going to be in that area, and that is for traffic that's going to be rerouted from where they're at now down to those locations. It's a very rural part of Tulare County, and so there's not a lot of traffic out there. Even in the 20-year horizon, there's not a lot of traffic forecasted out there. If I could talk a little bit about what this agreement is, and I'll go back. You all entered into agreement in 2013, and what we call that a reimbursement agreement. And really, essentially, what that agreement did is that agreement gave you all the right, or gave us the right, to compensate you for anything that your staff had to do in coordination with high-speed rail. And so the review of this master agreement that we're talking about today, that initial agreement was the mechanism that we can pay you and your staff for the time and effort that they've done reviewing that and working with us for getting this agreement signed. Come to the agreement that we have right now, Really, this agreement, in very simple terms, is the way that the high-speed rail and Tulare County are going to work together. It identifies road closures. It identifies some mechanisms that are going to be in place for what we're going to do in Tulare County. But it is also a mechanism that allows for county staff to be compensated by the design builder. So we can't, the design builder, who is Dragados, Flatiron, and Shimmick, are going to come and work with Tulare County staff, work with Public Works and everything like that. And it is their responsibility to compensate Tulare County staff for the time and effort that they work and they review the project. So in order to do that, this agreement needs to be in place so that the design builder knows what high-speed rail and knows what Tulare County have agreed to do and how they've agreed to work with one another. And so there's a lot of stuff in that agreement, but it also is a mechanism for the high-speed rail through our design builder to compensate Tulare County staff for the work that they're going to do to review these proposals, review the agreements, look at the traffic management plan, all of those things that come along with a major construction project happening in Tulare County. Real quick, since I got an audience here, next week at the board meeting on January 15th, what we call Construction Package 2.3, CP 2.3, is going to go to the board for approval. And our design build contract, we've gone through the bidding process, we've gone through the technical review process, we've gone through the cost review of that, and we've come up with the best, what they call the best value contract, and that contractor is Dragados, Flatiron, and Shimmick. And on the 15th, we're going to be looking at awarding that contract to Dragados. And so we're moving forward with CP23, and they'll be on board shortly after that. We hope to have a contract signed with them sometime in March, and then they will be on board and starting to look at areas where they can work. Because it's a design build, they only have 15% plans to go with. It is their responsibility and it is their risk to take those 15% plans to 100% and build what you all want in accordance with your standards and plans. The last thing that I will address is the Hormel property. We have met numerous times with Hormel, the operator, the facility out there. We didn't have enough time to get the proposed change into the contract when it went to the bidders, but we've worked with Tulare County staff, with Public Works, and we have flip-flopped the alignment. And so it doesn't touch their farming operation, and it doesn't touch their effluent discharge location. And so we've been able to do that by just taking what we proposed and flip-flopping it this way to avoid them altogether. Now that doesn't relieve us or doesn't minimize us. We still hit their feed mill operation, and that was we worked with different alignments. We looked at different things to try to avoid that, but we just could not avoid their feed mill operation. We missed their operation, but where they bring feed in from BNSF, we cannot avoid that. And so we're working with them to try to find another location where we can put that, where we can relocate them close to their operation. But unfortunately we cannot avoid the feed mill, but we do avoid their major operation.
Thank you, sir. And if I was going to make kind of a statement in a way of making a statement to make sure that I understand this correctly. We're saying with today's proposed agreement, each one of these items will have to come back to the board for individual review. It could be bundled together, but the idea of which closures, which overpassing, and each one of those will come back for the board for separate consideration.
Right. Each one of the 8 that have been identified, we realize that we will come back. Now, part of that is, and I failed to mention that, is because we're a railroad, and because we parallel BNSF, the California Public Utilities Commission is involved. And so whenever we go over the BNSF and whenever we go over high-speed rail, that requires that we get an agreement with the CPUC. And so part of that is we have to come with the application to you all, because you all are going to enter into that agreement with us, because you're going to be the ones going over BNSF and high-speed rail, and that has to be a motion by this governing council here. And so all of those, we will come back to you at that time.
But then the question part of this is that, as I look at this map, there is about a 9-mile stretch from the one overcrossing, number 5, until we get to an overcrossing south of Tulare County into Kern County. So there's going to be 9 miles of no east-west corridor with this proposed alignment and proposed closures and overcrossings. Is that a correct statement?
I need to look at that. I don't believe that is accurate, but
I'm looking at the map and I'm just counting blocks, and I figure those are 100 or 640 acre blocks. So I'm counting down. I get to 9 from 5 down to where the Kern County line is.
Right.
And my question there is, because I understand that we're going to bring back each one of these items. I mean, what this thing really sort of does is set forth, here are the crossings, here are the proposed closures. Now we'll come back and we'll discuss each one of those in terms of whether it meets the capacity requirements or whether it has a problem of closure and that sort of thing.
Right.
But the ability to add additional overcrossings and so forth would be precluded by this agreement. We would basically say these are the ones that are going to be under consideration.
Correct. Right.
So my question, and this is maybe back to our staff, is there a concern about this gap between the last closing, which is north of Allensworth, that we get down below the county line, where there will be no east-west means of getting across that line for a 9-mile period? And I raise that because, again, we have a situation down there where we're talking about a closure where there's not a whole lot of traffic, and yet the ability to move east and west across there in case of emergency for fire or flood or anything else is going to be more difficult to do. Just from my observation of a map and the distance, because the other ones actually, I will tell you, I'm quite impressed with the number of overcrossings that are proposed. I really anticipated there would be fewer of those than are proposed. The 5, given this part of Tulare County, given this, and it is a very rural area with not a lot of people, is considerable. But I did just sort of raise that issue or concern about that large gap between what's number 5 and what is the one in Kern County.
And I don't have an answer for you at this time. I can look that up and get back with staff if that is a concern. I know it is a very rural area, and there are not a lot of roads out there in that area as well. So, but I can definitely look that up and work with staff to get you an answer.
And I raise it because I think, if it's one of those types of things, it's the negative. We were looking at existing roads and existing crossings and addressing those. I'm talking more from a long-term planning perspective. Do we need to think about something in between there for the purposes of providing for those
right, and
especially for emergency purposes?
It does not preclude that in the future that an overcrossing can't be built there either. So if the traffic volumes are not there now, then, and there's a boom out there in the
don't anticipate the boom.
in the western part of Tulare County, then maybe that's
Our RMA director stepped up and thought.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Just very briefly, if the board is inclined to feel that this is a material item for which there is no specific answer at this time, that's one of the reasons why in the presentation it was set forth that there is no absolute time sensitivity with regard to this. We wanted to have enough flexibility that if issues like this came up, we could continue this so that we could supply information. My immediate reaction would be, if there is a concern with regard to that, we may want to negotiate an additional provision to the agreement which allows that flexibility for the specific crossing that you were referring to.
And that's why I brought it up, because I didn't know whether it actually had been analyzed. I mean, it was the kind of thing which you analyze what you have, not necessarily what you don't have, and this is that kind of a situation.
Right. I will tell you that nothing was looked at in the environmental document. The document was circulated to Tulare County staff, Public Works to look at, and so if that's something that is going to be desired, that's not included in the environmental document, and so that would require a supplemental or some sort of reevaluation of the environmental.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman.
Other question or comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions for you. Do we have a definitive route for the high-speed rail? I mean, can you mark where that railroad is going, that we all know exactly where that train's going to go through? Or is that still in flux?
No. From 1 mile north of Tulare County line, to the current Tulare County line, to American Avenue in Fresno County, it is set.
Well, how come if you're making arrangements to go around the Hormel process, it's not set?
That is a single county road overcrossing that we knew about prior to the environmental document, but we were not able to get it into the environmental document. And so at the request of the property owner and evaluating it, we are able to relocate that. It's that flip-flop will still have to go through the environmental reevaluation.
So you can take like a yard marker on a football field and take that white line and tell me from Merced to Bakersfield, that is where that line is going to be.
Not from Merced to Bakersfield. There is a section up in the Chowchilla area, which we call the Y's.
Okay, let's narrow it down to Tulare County.
Tulare County, I can go out and I can bring my survey crew out and I can stake the alignment for you for the entire Tulare County line.
Okay. Second question I have, what happens if Tulare County does not approve this agreement?
We will continue to work with staff, and we will continue to listen to what they have to say. We'll have to listen to what you have to say through them and through the discussion here today, and then we will come back to you, and we will try to answer all your questions. If we can't, we'll continue to come back to you. Like I said, this agreement is really how Tulare County and High Speed Rail are going to operate. We have another entity, which is the design build contractor, that is going to be doing our work for us and is going to be coordinating with your public works staff. And this agreement in place sets the mechanisms in place so that they can do that for you. And it also, the mechanism in place to compensate you and your staff for the time that you spend working and coordinating with high speed, with our contractor.
Well, I understand the reimbursement rate, but I still have a problem with the ability for our landowners and other government agencies to have a clear dialogue with the authority and with the people that represent them on questions that we have. This idea of having to hire an attorney to talk to get answers back or to get the attention of people doesn't sit well with me. And
I understand that.
And that also goes to this agreement. It's really kind of loose. And how do we dialogue when in the past the dialogue hasn't been there?
Let me address your concern about property owners. We have a right-of-way process that we follow, which is very similar to what Caltrans does when they go out and approach property owners. We approach them. We have to do an evaluation and an appraisal of their property. One of the things, when any property owner calls and contacts me or I go out with an appraiser, I remind the property owner, you need to tell us exactly what you have out here. Wells, irrigation equipment, improvement structures, all of those things. You need to let us know what we are, because we need to put all of that into the appraisal. What we're finding out is that property owners and our appraisers do not communicate with one another when they come out to evaluate the property. And So I remind property owners, please be very forthcoming with all information that you have for that. Property owners are also entitled to go get their own appraiser and do their own appraisal of the property. And we're finding that the law allows them for $5,000 to go get their own appraisal. We're finding that $5,000 doesn't cover all the appraisals for some of these large farming community, farming businesses, or farming properties. And so we're working through that with the property owners and everything like that. But we come and we get an appraisal, and we work through that appraisal process very similar to what Caltrans does. If you can imagine, what normally happens is it's when it gets down to the bottom line at the end of the day, it's about money. They feel their property is more than what it's being offered, and that goes into a negotiation part of it. And then if we can't agree upon a settlement, then yes, we do have to go through the resolution and necessity property process of the thing and go into eminent domain. But that is not until we've exhausted every avenue that we can. The 30 resolutions that you're talking about are uncontested, and so they're consent items, and so they're not contesting that we're taking their property, they're contesting the value of their property.
And so I appreciate that, sir. I was going to say to the chairman, I think that your board and is it Ogle? Did I get that correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Are talking about two different things. You're talking about the process for compensating someone once it's been decided what property you need to take from them, and coming to an agreement, if you can, about what the value of that is. The county does that all the time when we do road construction and improvements. However, what the board is talking about, I think, is an earlier discussion about whether there are alternatives to where you are going to go on the property that would reduce the cost and the impact to the property owner and their business operation. And it is that discussion that I think is lacking or not occurring. And I would say to you, I've got cards. I'm going to ask if you wouldn't mind taking them back to your council, because we certainly haven't been able to talk with anyone about any flexibility in term, and by we I mean my office, with your attorneys about whether there are alternatives. This seems to be moving forward with this. Forgive the pun, its own speed and momentum, and that discussion is not occurring. In the situation analogous with the county, when we, for example, widened a road recently, a substantial transportation corridor, decisions were made, and the board will recall, to move where the road was going to be in particular areas, to redesign curves and things like that. And some of you are nodding, so you're remembering what I'm discussing. And it's that kind of conversation that I think this board is concerned about more than fair I mean, there's a judicial process to decide fair compensation. Right. That's not really what we're talking about here, at least if I properly understand the board's concerns.
Well, if I might interject here, I see there's a couple of different issues here. I mean, we're here today to look at what it is that first off, I should have pointed out, what we're looking at here today is not in any way an affirmation of the board that we are in support or not in support of the high-speed rail. That's not the issue here. The high-speed rail is moving forward whether we oppose it or not. The issue is that as it comes to our county, we have to deal with that, and that's what we're looking at here today: is how do we deal with that? So our immediate concern, and I can certainly understand the concern about, and I think as I see it, we're not going to be able to use this as some sort of a hammer over the authority to make them do something for the property owners that we would prefer that they do or not do. That we don't really have that ability. They're going to go forward anyway. as was stated, I appreciate the question from Mr. Sheeta. If we don't sign this contract, it's not going to stop the project. It's not going to stop these processes from going forward. It just might make it a little bit more complicated, but it's going to happen. And really, the PUC is going to be the one to have the final okay, I think, of this sort of thing about, because they're the ones that we went through that process with the power company when they did their project. But I think there is this issue, and it's a little different issue about analyzing, again, are these the best locations for overcrossings and for the absence of overcrossings? That is of concern to the county, because this is our road system. And even if they're not maintained roads, I do have this issue, I think it needs to be addressed, of the distance between 5 and Kern County. Because obviously we have a lot of, as you look north on the map, we have several crossings and they're fairly close together, but you have that very obvious gap, which is a pretty extensive, 22 miles, you're talking about 9 miles of gap there. So anyway, I just think I'd like to have our staff take a little more time to evaluate that from the county's perspective. Are these in the best place? Do we agree with these locations? Do we think there ought to be another overcrossing because of this gap that I've raised? I think we ought to have that analysis after today's meeting and bring it back for further discussion.
Mr. Chair, go ahead, Cox.
For me, I look at this contract as a way for us to get a seat at their table. I don't, the train is coming down the track, and I'm not going to stand on those tracks and try to stand, in front of it. And I kind of feel like that's what might be trying to happen here. Like you said, this is going to happen with or without us. I think having this contract in place gives us that seat at the table, gives us that direct connection with the contractor who is going to be doing the building. I'll acknowledge there's been a lack of communication between the High-Speed Rail Authority and just about everybody, but this gives us an opportunity to have a seat at the table with the people that are going to be the boots on the grounds building the project. So I think it would be, it would not behoove us to not consider going into this contract. And like Terry said, he can take stakes out right now and stake the path. We're not going to move it, 1 inch, 2 inches maybe? It's not going to move. But I think having the seat at the table, working with the design build contractor, maybe we can, have that. Well, does 1, 2, 3 need to be where they're at, or does it need to be 1, skip 2, and then move 2 down in that 9-mile blank section? But I think having this contract in place gets us a reimbursement that Mr. Spot is looking for, as well as gets us the seat at the table to have, our say when it comes time to where these things are going to go. So not having this contract in place, I think, would be a huge mistake.
But for the one thing, the point, if we sign the contract as is today, we would be identifying the locations right now. So that's why I think we need to take time to reevaluate that to determine what you're talking about, what I'm talking about.
Is that true, Mr. Spada?
If I may make a comment, both points are well taken in the sense that, yes, this is a reimbursement agreement and it gets us to the table, and it's better to be inside the tent rather than outside the tent. However, this is a cooperation agreement, which implies that there is a degree of responsibility on the part of the county to cooperate with the High-Speed Rail Authority. So the question is, how much flexibility do we have with regard to future agreements? The preferred approach would be, without passing judgment on whether we should enter into the contract, it would be better to clarify language before you enter into an agreement rather than after, which suggests maybe a short continuance to allow further discussion with our colleague with the High-Speed Rail Authority, maybe in the best interest.
Mr. Van Poel.
All right, Mr. Chair, I was just going to say, I agree with what Supervisor Cox said, and I was going to make that comment. I appreciate the opportunity for Tulare County to have a seat at the table, because I do think that we're going to represent our local businesses and our residents a lot better than the authority. No offense, Terry. I just think that locals are going to represent locals better than someone from outside the area. But I agree with Supervisor Worthley. Before we enter into this agreement, I don't think that there's enough clarity or information to concretely sign this today. I do think we need to spend some more time. I think that the High-Speed Rail Authority should spend some more time with Hormel, with some of the neighboring landowners that are going to be impacted, and make sure that they have a feeling that they're being included in the process rather than just being railroaded right over. No pun intended.
all these terms.
But I would like to see that happen before we enter into this agreement, because if we do enter this agreement today, I do think we're just going to be rubber stamping, albeit an opportunity to be sitting at the table, but what we have in front of us, which is, I don't think, satisfactory to address all of our concerns. So I would move that we continue this
How much time
item.
do you need? What would be a good amount of time that you needed to do this?
I would probably say something like 60 days, because it's going to take some time for the authority to communicate and for our staff to get the work done. I want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable and that we're not continuing it a week and then recontinuing it and recontinuing
I
it.
agree with that. Is that acceptable?
I would like to have that clarified exactly what you expect the High-Speed Rail Authority to do.
Well,
I'm not understanding what you're asking.
Here's where I'm coming from. It really falls back to our staff to do the analysis of, are these the locations? And I understand, I appreciate the issue about CEQA and the fact that you've done an environmental analysis and it's difficult to deviate from that. We've been down that road ourselves on our own project, so we understand that. I just want to be sure that we are agreeable, and I'm not saying we're going to change anything, but I would just like to have our staff go back and double check to be sure that we've analyzed this, from beginning to end. It's not, and again, looking at it from a planning perspective, are we missing an opportunity when we don't look at that gap? Is that gap a big enough issue that we ought to kind of put our foot down and say, really, we would need something there and maybe we don't. Maybe it's not necessary. But that's kind of where I'm coming from. And it doesn't really go back to the authority doing anything. It really comes back to our staff kind of coming back to us, say, look, we've looked at everything. We feel comfortable with this. We've looked at our road systems. We're comfortable with the proposal as it is. And if that's the case, I'm prepared to go forward. But I really want to hear our staff tell me that.
And one thing I would think, if you're concerned about the road crossings, up in the northern part of Tulare County, there are 2 road crossings that are fairly close to one another. Is maybe you want to trade one of those.
That's what Mr. Sheeter commented on too. That might be a possibility. And that may be an option. All I'm just saying is that I would like to have our. In fact, when we had this initially on our consent calendar, I said I really need to have our staff come here and tell us they've analyzed this and they're satisfied, and this is the way we should go forward.
Mr. Chairman, when we talk about traffic and crossings, I think not Caltrans, but the authority is looking at vehicles. There's a big farming community out there, and that equipment only moves at 10 to 25 miles an hour. To move that equipment 10 miles to get one way, to go 10 miles back the other way, it really has a big impact upon air quality, has an impact on the farming costs of that operation. A car count doesn't work. And I want Caltrans, not Caltrans, but the authority to understand, we're not talking just about passenger cars. There's a lot of farm equipment that is being moved right now between different fields. I think the thing that I'd like to see, unfortunately for the whole project, if this was a Tulare County project and we took this to Caltrans or CTC, we wouldn't even get on the agenda. It's just not complete. You don't have the right-of-way. You have to buy the right-of-way and have it established.
I understand. I understand your concerns, but I can't. I'm not the one that made that decision to decide that. But we are moving forward.
I know you're moving forward, and that's what gets me. You're moving forward against everything you require us to do. The state's moving forward, and forgetting about the requirements they put on other government.
One of the benefits of going with the design build and not the regular design bid build, one of the benefits is we are able to get a project out quicker. Once we do have certain sections of right-of-way, we don't have to have all of the right-of-way, but once we have certain sections of it, the contractor can go to work there. So he doesn't have to wait for 100% plans. He could take those 15% plans and go to work. And so that's one of the benefits of going with design build.
I understand that.
I'm not making
it is a benefit, but you got a lot of holes in this
I'm not disputing that we have a lot of holes, but there are a lot of benefits with what we're doing with design build.
Any other questions?
You know, one last thing. I don't want to throw this board in between property owners and the High-Speed Rail Authority as well. You know, if there wants to be some personal involvement, that's fine. I don't want to throw this board into those negotiations. I think those negotiations need to happen between the property owners and the whoever is doing the right-of-way acquisition for the High-Speed Rail Authority. So just by way of statement, I don't want to throw ourselves, this board, I don't think we should be involved in those types of negotiations. We're looking at, you know, exactly what we're looking at here, looking at possible road closures, overcrossings, the process that our staff, you know, how they would meet with the design build contractor. You know, I think 60 days is too long as well. I'm going to look to Mr. Spada to ask him how much time he needs to come back with the answers to the questions we've asked. I think 60 days is too long because I don't want to throw us into the negotiation process.
We can do it in 30 days. The question will be the speed at which the High-Speed Rail Authority can get back to us and then acknowledge or agree to any revisions that may be necessary. So, but we could do our work quickly. We could probably do it this week, no later than next week. But I'd say 30 days would be a good block of time to start with.
Because if the staff came back with a different recommendation from what we have here, then they would have to get back to the authority, and then we'd have to introduce the discussions with you.
And again, the only thing I would ask is please be very clear with what you would ask, what you're asking the High-Speed Rail to provide you.
Do we have a contact person yet?
I'm the contact person, or Diana Gomez would be the contact.
So our staff would be working directly with you, and you commit to if they get you the work we've asked for in 2 weeks, you can get back here in 2 weeks after that, so you can have answers for us in 30 days.
I think we can provide you answers quicker than that.
Okay.
And I would change my motion from 60 days to 30 days. I think that would be fine.
Michelle, what would that date look like for us?
It would be February 3rd.
I would be amenable to that, but
can we put that off one meeting? I will not be here February 3rd.
Okay. So it's the 10th?
So it would be the 10th, yes.
But one thing I will say too, though, and I do appreciate Diana's communication and everything. But for example, and this is why our staff has to do their due diligence on this. If we were to get rid of bridge number 2 and move it down to somewhere between 5 and the Kern County line, that would completely take Hormel, I think, out of the picture in terms of the overcrossing and alignment, but it would still bisect our property. So I would just continually ask you to please speak with the property owners directly if you can. I know you're asking them to be forthcoming, and they did indicate to me that they have received a blanket letter that just said, hey, please meet with our appraisers, and it is their responsibility to do so. But if there are ways we can avoid it, we should avoid it, and I just ask that you continue to have good, clear communication with them so that they feel as if they're a part of the process.
Right. And my response to that would be, yes, they do get a blanket letter. It's what they call a notice to appraise the property, and there is a local phone number, somebody that's a right-of-way agent that works out of our office in Fresno. They can call that office. But what I have found the best, and we've done this quite a bit with property owners, is, and I would welcome all of you to come with us, is we meet with a property owner, we roll out a map on their kitchen table, and we listen to their concerns. We talk about how they're impacted and stuff like that. That's been the best, and we've had Supervisor Pedroso from Merced County in those meetings where we've rolled out maps on kitchen tables and sat down and had pretty meaningful discussions. So I would welcome you all, if you're in a district where we're impacting property owners, that if you all want,
it's all in my district, but I have spoken with our RMA staff about such a meeting in the coming future once we get this kind of settled and continued, and we have a definitive date, because I think it is important to sit down and talk face to face, because I hope that we can come to some resolution.
Right.
I think it's the intention of this board. I want to make it very clear. We're not being involved in your negotiations between the purchase of right-of-way. We've purchased a lot of right-of-way in the last several years, and we understand the process thoroughly. It's just a matter of alignments and stuff that our constituents are saying, where do I go for help when they have an issue? and they come to us. But as far as the condemnation of land, and all, we all understand that we're not even going to walk into that theater.
Have them contact Stephanie or myself or Diana, and we'll be happy to meet with anyone.
Thank you.
Frogel, I appreciate you being here today and your
Okay, thank you.
presentation.
Thank you for your time.
So we have a motion for a 30-day continuance. I don't know if I had a
Continue
second.
to February 10th, and I'll second that.
The 10th, I'm sorry, yes. And a second by Mr. Cox. Any further discussion? Please cast your votes. Vote is unanimous. Thank you all. All right, that concludes our regular meeting this morning. We have items for closed session. Council is consulting with Mr. Ogle. But we will adjourn to closed session at this time. Thank you for being here.
Hey, Steve, maybe make the announcement. I noticed that Mrs. Lopez came in after the fact. Let her know that we have continued the meeting. On the earlier public hearing.
Oh, on the other public hearing, Mrs. Lopez, that matter was continued to the 13th, next Tuesday. Right, Mr. Perez?
No.
No what?
Nobody from my office authorized that.
Well.
I have here a letter from county council for clarity of the record.
If you would, Mr. President, use the microphone.
First time somebody's told me I couldn't be heard.
You're being heard over a larger audience.
I understand. Victor Pettis appearing on behalf of Marilu Lopez. I have a letter from county council agreeing to continue the matter to today's date at 11 o'clock. Why anybody would think that we were in agreement to change it to another day is beyond me, because my client is here, we're prepared to go forward, and we're told that the matter was continued. I would think that that would be contingent upon some kind of agreement on my part and a fallback date.
It was represented to us that it was with your consent and agreement. So what we're going to
It's
do?
been misrepresented.
What we're going to do is we're going to take some time off right now and go into closed session. We have some closed session items we'll take care of. I will have our counsel get her
on her way.
Ms. Sullivan back over here.
On her way.
And we'll take this matter up in a few moments. Board is back in regular session.
Mr. Chairman, before we commence, for the record, I'd like to state that my office does have an ethical wall in this matter, that myself and the resource team, including Mr. Jackson, are on the board side of the ethical wall, are not involved in the merits or the process of this hearing application. I briefly spoke with Mr. Perez to determine if the matter had been resolved between council and was advised it had not been, so I said we would need to come back and the matter needs to be heard before your board on the record.
Who's going to speak to us at this time?
Chairman, Crystal Sullivan, County Counsel for the Tax Collector. So I understand there's some confusion about the January 13th date. My understanding is that my paralegal on 12/18 received a phone call from Mr. Perez's office regarding the January 6th date that was reset. That date turned out to be a problem date. It was moved from the December date, but the January 6th date, our witness, key witness, Lieutenant Hunt, was not available. So we discussed with his office the next two available Tuesdays as a possibility. She represented that wasn't a problem. Then I understand from an email I received that Mr. Jackson, who advised the board of that continued date, was going to issue a letter out to Mr. Perez after this date, continuing that. So that's the extent of the correspondence, perhaps the confusion.
Okay. Mr. Perez?
Nobody in my office has authority to change a date, save myself. Nobody. Office policy is every date that's set, every date that's continued, it goes through me first. This gets changed daily, my calendar. That's why that policy is in place. I'm not calling anybody a liar. I don't deny that there was a communication between county counsel's office and my own. What my staff says is that they were told that there might be a problem with today's date and that they would come back to us with another date if that problem continued to exist. To date, we've received nothing by way of correspondence saying that the date was changed from today. When I heard this morning at about 9:30 that it was going to be changed, that because my client had communicated with my office, because I heard that, I didn't call my investigator in. Okay? Otherwise, he'd be here, be willing to testify on our behalf.
Well, I am a little bit confused
why
about
my
the 11
office-
o'clock reference because our public hearings are always scheduled at 9 o'clock. The one letter that we saw that I think you referenced as you were holding it up did not say anything about 11 o'clock. It just simply said the date, which was today's date.
Counsel and I spoke about that because I had a couple of appearances that preceded that hour, and I didn't know how quickly I could get here, which is why I asked for an 11 o'clock setting. I asked for that.
Mr.
That's why I
Worthley,
calendared that.
if may I address, that communication was not with me. It was with Julia Langley in my office. And in fact, I was in New York, and I received a call that there was a communication. I wasn't aware of the 11 o'clock communication, but I concur that's where that came from.
That might well have been the case. I don't have a specific recollection.
Now, my understanding, Mr. Perez, is you indicated that your investigator is not here.
He's not. And several witnesses that were prepared to testify are already gone. And certainly we can't conclude this matter in a few minutes. I don't have a problem with putting it over. But I heard the 13th. I'm going to be in Fresno in the morning in an appearance over there, and then I have 3 or 4 other matters on that morning. It's just simply not an available date. Unless this board is willing to hear it at 1:30, in which case I might be able to accommodate that. But
The 27th. We're dark on the 20th.
27th work for you, Victor Perez?
I think so, if I can be here at like 10.
That's not a problem.
Okay.
27th?
I've got confirmation from the Sheriff's Department that Lieutenant Hunt should be available on that day, and I'm available.
So there'll be no more continuances. On the 27th, this matter will be heard. There'll be no problem if you're not here at 9 o'clock. We will continue the matter until you are able to be here, Mr. Perez.
Thank you.
What? Are you not going to be here?
Mr. Perez,
Okay, all right.
if I could ask if your you or your office staff could either advise Ms. Sullivan or advise Ms. Baldwin of approximately when you plan to be here by the day before, by Monday, then we'll adjust matters accordingly, schedule other matters accordingly.
Of course.
So if 10 turns out to be something else, just let us know.
Understood. I'll do that. Thank you.
All right. I apologize for the inconvenience that this has created for everybody, but we'll continue the matter then until that date. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we continue this matter to that date and not a date beyond that.
Certain. Date certain. Okay. Second. All right. We have a motion by Mr. Vanderpool, second by Mr. Ennis. Please cast your votes. Votes are unanimous. Again, thank you all for being here. Apologize for the inconvenience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, madam.
did you have any other business, or can I just go ahead and announce out the
I
closed
believe we're
session
done.
items?
We've completed our closed session.
All right. Your board does have closed session items. Items A through E. Items A and B are off your board's closed session agenda, and there are no announcements, or there will be no announcements.